Humans are weird supply and demand. The gleaming green sunlight was just angling down for the afternoon when Flight Sub-Commander 20 Clicks discovered that one of the humans had eaten the entire supply of acidic calcium supplement for the base. He had the holo record right in front of him. He scratched the control screen one more time just to be sure of what he was seeing. It was a fairly simple situation on the fringes of the air mass. The human had been on duty in the supply bay. It had been his job to fill all material requests for the base. Humans were exceptionally well adapted for this duty. Their height alone made working in the warehouses an easy matter for them. Their truly terrifying compressive strength meant that they ignored the lifting machines most of the time in favor of manually filling the orders. They were more likely to send the drones for the smaller packages than for the larger ones. 20 Clicks had once seen a human lift an entire shelving unit full of prefabricated building cores simply to retrieve a scrap of paper that the human immediately tossed in the recycler. 20 Clicks scratched the control again to watch the scene over, trying to understand. The human was what they called middle-aged. Not yet out of his reproductive cycle, but past the prime of his breeding age. His hair was beginning to thin on the top of his head in a way that made him look dull and scattered. His uniform was clean but rumpled. He was sprawled across the chair he was nominally sitting in. He had forced two of the supports off of the ground and was bracing the unbalanced position by resting his legs on a nearby storage crate. In one hand, he held a datapad which the helpful AI indicated was displaying one of the popular theoretical social simulations. The other hand was otherwise occupied. 20 Clicks watched in fascination as the massive hand, easily as large as one of his wings, lifted from where it rested on the human's thigh and drifted almost as if not under the control of the massive mammalian brain towards the open bag of calcium citrate supplements that rested beside the human on a crate. The hand, all the time out of range of the human's binocular vision, drifted over and past the bag till it reached nearly the full range of the human's flexibility, then drifted back and began to make short passes in the general location of the bag. This was clearly undulate behavior, or perhaps it would be if the undulate was old and blinded to visible light and was feeling around for something. Yet 20 Clicks had checked, and the human had spent only a nominal amount of training time with the undulates. What this actually resembled was the slow, groping reaching of a vine-type plant for some secure hold. 20 Clicks wondered if human hands had an autonomous search function. To think of that massive crushing power under the control of plant-like chemical signals was terrifying. On the display, the hand brushed over the band and flexed to reach into the interior, moving more confidently now that it had tactile information. The hand closed over what the humans called a handful of the supplements. Enough to supply a dozen humans for a month. However, the wandering hand slowly lifted them to the human's mouth and began pushing the mass of supplements into a mouth that opened slackly to admit them. The human chewed approximately half the mass for several moments before swallowing with a massive gulp. The hand then pressed in the rest, and even as the mouth chewed, the hand drifted back down to the bag. It groped around, with slightly slower motions this time, and pulled in another handful of the supplements. This process repeated itself a few dozen times until the bag was empty. When the hand finally found no more supplements in the bag, it returned to the slack rest position on his leg. It rested there for several moments. However, the inevitable consequence of ingesting that much calcium and ascorbic acid was quickly taking its toll on even the legendary metabolism of the human. His skin paled as his digestive system pulled blood to his gut to deal with the unexpected meal. The muscles around his eyes tightened and strained for a few moments. Then his mouth contracted in a grimace. The hand, busy holding the datapad, gave a spasm. The guilty hand rose and clutched at the human's abdomen over the general location of his primary stomach. He narrowed his eyes and looked down at his abdomen with a perplexed expression. "What the ever-loving?" he muttered. He glanced over at the empty bag of supplements and his face contorted with unease and perhaps guilt. 20 Clicks was unsure. The human rose to his feet, staggering in place of his usual graceful movements. His guilty hand reached around to clutch his abdomen as he staggered to the comm unit on the wall. He braced one shoulder against the wall and carefully pulled up the supplies manifest. He typed in an order for an emergency refill on the supplies, hesitated when he came to the section in the form that requested a reason, and after a moment typed in accidental destruction. The human then staggered back to his seat and collapsed in it with a groan. He stayed there for the rest of his shift, and 20 clicks let the recording play until it showed his own wings flitting into the storage area to request a new carry harness. He sighed as he turned off the recording. He had, of course, ordered the recalcitrant human to the medical bay, and the Shatar medic on duty had soon relieved the human's distress with an oral-administered oil flush. It had seemed extreme to the winged, but the Shatar and the human both agreed it was the safest method to cleanse his digestive tract of the calcium build-up. When, after the treatment, 20 clicks had pressed for an explanation, the human had only shrugged. "I didn't notice what I was doing," he said. "It was a good book." Humans are weird misreading. "Will human friend Frank be joining us?" Trustic asked as he loaded the cards into the automatic shuffler. "I find his insight into the social rules of this game invaluable." "I highly doubt that second mechanic will be joining us," Seventh Sister said as she arranged the glasses of recreational liquid on the surface. "When I passed his workstation, he was still working at full speed on the report for the Central University." "How odd," Trustic said. "It is hardly odd for a human to procrastinate in my experience," Ninth Cousin offered when Seventh Sister didn't seem inclined to comment. "As a usual habit of the species, yes," Trustic observed. "However, human friend Frank is punctual to a fault. He prepares a schedule every week and updates it daily. I have never known him to procrastinate on an important project. And yet I heard him typing away at his with frantic speed," Seventh Sister replied. "I wonder what could have caused this," Trustic mused as he dealt out the cards. "He misread the report," 83 Trills stated as the flight of winged zipped into the room carrying small bags of the exploded grain human favored for recreational activities. The winged fluttered around distributing the small bags of the lightweight carbohydrate complex. The Shatar accepted theirs eagerly. Their digestive tracts were well adapted to turn the dead carbohydrates into useful energy. Trustic found the substance edible but more entertaining than nutritious. From what he observed of the winged's behavior, they agreed, except in a much more energetic way. They were pairing off with one of the lumpy grains and tossing it back and forth in the air. "It is time to begin playing," Trustic called out as he finished dealing. The winged gathered in a cloud for a brief conversation as they appointed 3 players to land and participate in this hand. They chose 3 mid-ranking winged, and the rest resumed chasing the popped corn around the higher levels of the room. Seventh Sister's dominant eye was tilted towards the cards, but her antennae were flexing with thought that clearly had very little to do with the mathematical calculations the game required. However, it was Ninth Cousin who finally spoke up. "How does a sapient species misread a document?" she asked. "He read it too fast," one of the winged offered from a corner of the room. "It failed to process," another pipped up. "But he did read the instructions," Ninth Cousin protested. By all of the home university's calculations, humans gain the ability to read even before their secondary sexual characteristics fully manifest. "How did he read simple instructions wrong?" "He explained it to me once," one of the winged said. "Some humans read more by sounding the general shape of the words than by following each tracing." "But writing is two-dimensional to human visual resolution," she pressed. "How do you sound a two-dimensional image?" "The shape of it," came the answer from the other side of the room. "But shape varies with each printing," Ninth Cousin went on. "It is standard for official communication," stated one of the winged, who was currently in the middle of the complicated process of tossing one of the cards to the center of the table. "The contours along the X and Y planes are fairly easy to identify," said the next wing to toss a card to the pile. So instead of taking a few microseconds longer to properly trace the marks of a writing system he has known for decades, Ninth Cousin asked, he simply sounded the shapes. And as a result of the inefficiency of that method, he now has to do 3 weeks of work in the space of one night. "Life is a gamble," the winged commander observed. "It really needn't be," Seventh Sister returned. "I think with some humans it does," Trustic said. "Now as we will not be blessed with the presence of our large mammalian friend when should one of us call." Humans are weird free stuff. "So far there has been no sign of hormonal shifts," 17th Sister was saying to the display screen. Her antenna twitched as she heard the rumbling of the heavy haul coming in. She rippled her frill in a request for silent patience as she considered. It would be the mated pair of physicists returning from the personnel errand they had requested the wheeled heavy haul for. It felt wrong, almost deceitful, but the pair were known to be very strict about such things. She quickly adjusted the screen settings to a range a human couldn't see and deliberately let her voice slip into the high range of soothing clicks of the mother language. "Why are we conversing like this?" Third Mother asked, tilting her broad, triangular head to the side, revealing the flaking of age behind her eyes. "There are humans coming in from outside," 17th Sister replied. "And we do not wish them to know about your suspected hormonal condition," Third Mother said, her worn mandibles clicking tightly in disappointment. 17th Sister braced her own mandibles to resist snapping at her First Mother's third sister. The situation, like most involving human, was complex. "I don't mind them hearing," she explained patiently. "I have actually spoken of this with the first physicist before, but humans have rather strict rules about overhearing personnel medical information. If I do not give them explicit permission to participate in the conversation, they will inconvenience themselves to preposterous extents to avoid overhearing what we are discussing." "Why do you not explicitly invite them?" Third Mother asked. "You know how the sexual dynamic is so different with them?" 17th Sister asked. "They are a balanced species," Third Mother acknowledged with a dip of her head. "It's more than that," 17th Sister expanded, flicking her frill in confusion. "There is a completely different set of rules for what biomedical data you can discuss with the females and the males. It would be different if they were biologists, but as they are theoretical mathematicians, they don't have any training to overcome their biological anti-parasite coding." Third Mother stared at her, tilting her head slowly from side to side as she tried to get her antennas into that. "What," she finally asked, "does their branch of science have to do with the anti-code training they receive?" "I don't know," 17th Sister clicked in a hollow tone. "But as I was saying, I think we have to face the reality that I am probably a sterile—" "There is no proof yet," Third Mother interrupted. "My own 17th Sister had two buds. A statistical anomaly," 17th Sister said with a dismissive wave. "We both know that past the 12th there is no guarantee that any sisters will reach hormonal maturity. I think— 17th Sister! How long you gonna be on that space phone?" came a loud voice. 17th Sister curled her antenna in annoyance and rippled her frill in apology to Third Mother. Third Mother gave a chitter of amusement in reply. She had heard the stories of the humans after all. "I will be on sometime," 17th Sister replied, tilting her head to direct one faceted eye towards the male half of the pair of physicists. "We are discussing my reproductive capacity." She indicated for Third Mother to watch his reaction, and the human did not disappoint. He stuttered a bit, and probably would have slunk out of the room if he had not been clearly uplifted by some triumphant joy. "What is he so pleased about?" Third Mother asked. Would it be rude to ask him to share his joy? "Not in the least," 17th Sister replied, before lowering the tone of her voice back into the human auditory range. "Was you called it a Viking raid, successful second physicist?" she asked. "Aye, and it was," he said, the discomfort fleeing from his face. "We were able to get there before they sent in the biomashers and pulled out a ton of free lumber. More than enough to finish the project for the little woman." "What will you do with the excess?" 17th Sister asked. "Oh," the human waved a hand dismissively. "Build a wee shed and store it till we need it for something or the other." The female human burst into the room and flashed her bony mandible protuberances at 17th Sister. "Aye, and you'll be off the phone in a bit?" she asked. "Not for some time," 17th Sister replied. "Well, we can wait," the male human said with a nod. "It's not time-sensitive after all, and we need to unload the wood." "Who are you going to communicate with?" 17th Sister asked, seeing Third Mother's curiosity in the colors of her frill. "My da," the human female replied. "Just want to tell him about our haul out there." "Did your ancestors proud catching wind of that decommissioned private base?" the male confirmed. "They'll be pleased as punch." "Let's get that free wood unloaded," the female instructed, and the two humans were about to leave. "A moment," 17th Sister interjected. "Yeah?" The humans turned to look at her curiously. "You did not call your first father when your last theory was confirmed by the team of the Gathering in the next system," 17th Sister observed. "Space calls are expensive," one human said with a shrug. "We just told them in the scheduled one a few days later." "You did not call them when your experiment was approved by the Central University," 17th sister observed again. Expensive, the male repeated with a shrug. If I understand the situation, 17th sister said slowly, you value the processed tree fibers because you were able to get them for free. Now you want to spend a significant amount to call your first father to boast of this free wood. That's the idea, the female human replied with a grin. You did your ancestors proud, the male said with a grin, reaching out and dropping an arm around his mate's shoulders. Dad needs to know about this. Let us know when the space phone's free, 17. The two walked out, still linked at the shoulders, and third mother clicked and hissed at the adorable behavior, but there was still a perplexed set to her antenna. How can two mathematicians be so inefficient? She asked. I don't know, third mother, 17th sister replied. I just don't know.